My brother pleaded for cash to secure a flat and then turned my family against me because he wanted more. I stunned everyone with the truth and severed ties. I've always been the one my family could rely on. Perhaps it's because I am the eldest, or maybe because I've always managed to stay afloat. Regardless, when my younger brother Ethan came to me in tears last year, saying he wanted to leave our parents' home and needed my assistance, I didn't hesitate. He spun a tale about feeling trapped at home and needing space to sort his life out. He claimed he couldn't handle our parents' constant interference and that they didn't understand his aspirations. He promised he would finally get a job and take charge of his life once he had his own place, but he needed a little help to get started. I rented him a modest apartment, nothing extravagant but suitable. I covered the security deposit, the first month's rent, and even helped him buy some essential furniture to make it feel like home. I made it clear this was not a permanent arrangement. I would support him for a few months until he could stand on his own. Initially, he seemed thankful, even saying, "I can't believe you are doing this for me. You are the best brother ever." It felt rewarding to help him, and I genuinely thought this might be the motivation he needed to get his life in order. However, after a few months, I began to notice troubling signs. He wasn't even attempting to find a job. Every time I inquired, he had an excuse ready. "The job market is terrible right now," or "I've been so stressed, I just need a break." Meanwhile, I continued to pay his rent because he always had a reason for not being able to cover it. The breaking point came in the fourth month, when I faced an unexpected expense. My car needed repairs, which drained some of my savings. I told Ethan I couldn't cover his rent that month and that he needed to figure it out. He exploded, suddenly devoid of gratitude, and shouted, "You are abandoning me. I can't believe you are leaving me like this." I explained it wasn't permanent, but he needed to take some responsibility. He stormed off, and I didn't hear from him for days. I thought maybe this would be the wake-up call he needed, but I couldn't have been more mistaken. Ethan didn't just go silent for a few days. He vanished for almost 2 weeks. I assumed he was trying to sort things out on his own, perhaps even applying for jobs as he had promised. I gave him space, thinking it was the right thing to do. Then my father called, asking, "Why are you being so cruel to your brother?" I was taken aback and asked him to clarify. Apparently, Ethan had gone to my parents, sobbing that I had abandoned him after forcing him into an apartment he couldn't afford. He claimed I had promised to take care of everything, and then left him high and dry. "He's your brother, for heaven's sake," my father exclaimed. "He's struggling, and you are just watching him sink." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Ethan had twisted the entire situation to make it seem like I pressured him to move out and then cut him off. I tried to explain the truth, that he had begged me for help, and that I had supported him for months, but my father wouldn't hear. "He's barely scraping by," my father insisted. "He's looking for a job but is so overwhelmed. How could you just leave him like that?" It didn't take long for my mother to join in, echoing the same sentiments. I was stunned. My brother wasn't just upset with me for cutting off financial support, was out for blood. He had painted me as the villain in front of our parents, and they believed him completely. To make matters worse, I discovered through a mutual friend that Ethan wasn't as overwhelmed as he claimed. He spent most of his days hanging out with friends and partying. Apparently, he even bragged that he didn't have to worry about rent because his foolish brother was taking care of it. When I confronted him, he didn't even try to deny it. "Maybe if you hadn't stopped helping me, I wouldn't have had to go to that," he said with a smug expression. "I had to survive, and you didn't care." It was as if he didn't see a problem with twisting the truth to gain sympathy from our parents. I decided I wouldn't let him ruin my reputation with them. I called for a family meeting to set the record straight. I thought if we all sat down and talked, I could explain everything and show my parents how much I had actually done for Ethan. The meeting began with tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. My parents sat across from me in their living room, arms crossed, with Ethan sitting smugly between them, refusing to look at me. I calmly laid out the facts, detailing how Ethan had begged me to help him move out, how I had rented the apartment and covered all expenses for months. I even mentioned the car repairs that left me unable to pay his rent that one month. "What did he do?" I asked. Instead of stepping up like he promised, he went out with friends and partied. Ethan gasped dramatically. "That's not true. You are just making things up to make me look bad. I told you I was trying, but you didn't care. You just wanted to get rid of me." My mother immediately jumped to his defense. "You are being so harsh. He's your brother. He's struggling, and you just watched him fail." I couldn't believe it. I had receipts literally. I pulled out my phone and showed them screenshots of the rent payments, the furniture orders, everything. "Look at this. Does this look like someone who doesn't? I've been carrying this for months." But my father just shook his head. "It doesn't matter. If you knew he wasn't ready, you shouldn't have kicked him out. You set him up to fail." Ethan wiped away fake tears. "See? He just wants to humiliate me. He doesn't care about family." I felt like I was in a surreal nightmare. No matter how much proof I had or how much I had done for them, my parents had completely bought into Ethan's lie. Then Ethan went for the jugular. "You are just mad because you couldn't control me anymore," he said. "That's why you stopped helping to punish me." I snapped. "Are you serious? You are the one who begged for help, and when I couldn't keep up, you turned everyone against me. You are not struggling, you are lazy." My mother stood up angrily. "Enough. We're done with this. Ethan's trying his best, and you are just kicking him while he's down. If you can't be a decent brother, maybe you should stay away until you figure out what family is." I was stunned. My own parents had completely sided with him despite all the evidence. I didn't know what to say, so I walked away. But as I left, I made a decision. If they wanted to believe his lies, they could deal with the consequences. I was done being their punching bag. After that disastrous meeting, I took a step back. I stopped returning Ethan's phone calls and ignored my parents' attempts to guilt me into fixing things. I figured if they were so convinced he was the victim, they could handle his drama on their own. It didn't take long for Ethan to realize I was serious. A week after the meeting, I started receiving texts from him. At first, they were passive-aggressive. "Thanks for ruining my life. I hope you are happy." Then they became desperate. "I can't pay the rent this month. What am I going to do? Are you really going to let me end up on the street?" I ignored. I had already done more than enough, and I wasn't going to enable him anymore. A few days later, my father called me, furious. "Ethan says he's being evicted," he yelled. "How can you let this happen? He's your brother." I remained calm. "He's an adult, Dad. If he can't afford the apartment, he needs to move out or get a job." "He's been trying," my father insisted. "You know how tough things are right now." "Has he really?" I asked. Because the last I heard, he was spending his days hanging out with friends and doing nothing. "Did he tell you that?" My father hesitated. "He's under a lot of stress," he said, avoiding the question. "Stress?" I snapped. "I've been paying his rent for months. I bought him furniture. I gave him a chance to get on his feet, and he blew it. It's not my problem anymore." But my father wasn't interested in logic. "You are letting your family down," he said. "You'll regret it." I hung up, angry. I wasn't going to let them manipulate me anymore. A week later, I received a call from my aunt, who had never been one to stay out of family drama. She told me that Ethan had moved back in with my parents and was telling everyone in the family that I was a selfish brother who had forced him to live alone and then left him homeless. "Are you kidding me?" I said. "He begged me for help. I paid for everything. I even have proof." "Well, maybe you should show it to everyone," my aunt said. "Because he's making you out to be the bad guy, and your parents are eating it." That's when I decided I had enough. If Ethan wanted to play dirty, I could play dirty too, but I would do it with the truth. After my aunt's call, I realized that if I didn't fight back, Ethan's lies would spread unchecked. I gathered all the evidence I had: bank statements, receipts for rent, furniture, and even groceries I had bought for him in those first few months. I also compiled all the text messages where Ethan had begged for my help, thanked me for supporting him, and promised to get a job soon. Then I called for another family meeting. Walking into my parents' living room felt like déjà vu. They were sitting on the couch with Ethan in the middle, looking smug as ever. My mother shot me a cold look, and my father didn't even acknowledge my presence. But this time, I was prepared. "I am here to clear my name," I said. "If you still want to believe Ethan after this, that's your choice, but I am not going to let him destroy my reputation without hearing the truth." Ethan rolled his eyes. "Oh, here we go, big speech about how you are the victim." I ignored him and began laying everything out. I showed them the rent payments, the texts where he admitted he couldn't handle living at home and begged for my help, and the ones where he thanked me for paying his way. I even pulled up the screenshots my friend had sent me of Ethan bragging about how he didn't need a job because his foolish brother was footing the bill. When I finished, the room was dead silent. My mother's face was pale and my father looked uncomfortable, as if he wanted to say something but didn't know how. But Ethan, he doubled down. "So what?" he said. "You still left me when I needed you. You can't just expect someone to suddenly take care of everything all by themselves. You set me up to fail." I laughed bitterly. "Set you up to fail? You are 26 years old, Ethan. At some point you have to take responsibility for your own life. I gave you a head start, and you squandered. That's on you, not me." To my disbelief, my mother sided with Ethan again. "She's still your brother," she said. "You could have been more patient. Maybe if you hadn't cut him off so suddenly." I held up my hand. "Enough. I've had enough of this. I've been more than patient. I've done more than enough. If you want to keep enabling him, go ahead, but I am done. Don't call me again unless it's to apologize." With that, I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I just left. For the first time in months, I felt free. After I walked out, I cut off all communication, no phone calls, no texts, no family gatherings. I needed space. And honestly, I wasn't sure I ever wanted to talk to them again. But the surprises didn't stop there. A few weeks later, I received a message from someone I wasn't expecting. Ethan's ex-girlfriend, Sarah. We hadn't spoken in years, but she reached out to tell me she'd heard about the drama through the grapevine. "Look, I don't want to get in the middle of anything," she started, "but I thought you should know something." Apparently, Ethan had pulled the same stunt on her years ago, manipulating her into paying his bills while they were dating. When she finally caught on and confronted him, he played the victim, telling their mutual friends that she was controlling and financially abusive. "He's good at getting people to believe," Sarah said. "I've lost a few friends over." I couldn't believe it. Ethan had a pattern of using people, and I had walked right into his trap. The worst part was that my parents were enabling him just as his friends had done in the past. But then came the real shocker. Sarah mentioned that while they were dating, Ethan had been hiding a second bank account, depositing money from side gigs while still claiming to be broke. "You might want to check to see if he's doing that again," she said. That lit a fire under me. I had no idea how to confirm it, but the possibility that Ethan wasn't as broke as he claimed made my blood boil. The answer came sooner than I thought. A few days later, my cousin Amanda texted me out of the blue. "Hey, I know you are not talking to Ethan, but you might want to see this," she wrote, attaching a screenshot. It was from Ethan's private Instagram, the one he didn't let most of the family follow. In the photo, he was at a luxury resort with friends, drinks in hand, captioned, "Living my best life." I stared at the picture in disbelief. He had sobbed to my parents about being broke, claiming he couldn't pay rent, and here he was, enjoying a lavish getaway. I knew I shouldn't get involved again, but this was too much. I forwarded the screenshot to my parents with a simple message: "This is the person you are defending." My mother called me almost immediately, sounding upset. "It's not what it looks like," she said. "Maybe somebody else paid for it. You don't know the whole story." "I don't care who paid for it," I replied. "He's clearly not fighting like he says he is. He's playing you just like he played me." My father chimed in this time. "You don't understand how hard it is for him. You don't know what he's going through." "No, I do," I snapped. "And it's the same thing he's been going through his whole life, refusing to take responsibility. He's not fighting, he's manipulating." They didn't say much more after that, but I could tell the conversation had planted seeds of doubt. The real turning point came a week later when I received a call from Ethan's landlord. Apparently, I was still listed as his emergency contact. He informed me that Ethan had moved out without notice and left the apartment in terrible condition, holes in the walls, garbage everywhere, and even some furniture missing, the same furniture I had paid for. He asked, "Do you know how I can reach him?" I hung up without answering, feeling angry but not surprised. Ethan was running from his problems again, leaving a mess in his way. At this point, I was done playing nice. I called my parents one last time and laid it all out. The landlord's call, the Instagram post, Sarah's story about his hidden bank account. "He's not fighting," I said. "He's cheating everyone around him, and if you keep enabling him, you are only going to get hurt too." My mother cried, and my father mumbled something about needing time to process, but I didn't wait for their reaction. I told them I was severing ties for good. No more phone calls, no more guilt trips, no more trying to make me the bad guy. Let them figure it out for themselves, I said, because I am done. I haven't spoken to Ethan or my parents since. Every now and then, I hear bits and pieces through family gossip how Ethan burned through their savings after moving back in, how they finally kicked him out when he refused to get a job, how he's couch surfing with friends now. Do I feel bad sometimes? Sure. But mostly, I feel relieved. I've been the scapegoat for too long, and cutting him off was the best decision I ever made. About 6 months after I cut ties with Ethan and my parents, my cousin Amanda contacted me with an update. I didn't ask for it, but I couldn't ignore it. "You are not going to believe this," she began. "Ethan has a new girlfriend." I wasn't interested at first, but Amanda was determined to fill me in. Ethan had started dating a woman in her mid-50s, a wealthy businesswoman he met through one of his party friends. Amanda described her as the type who wore designer clothes, drove a luxury car, and probably had more money than she knew what to do with. And of course, Ethan moved in with her, Amanda said. He's living the life now. She covers everything: rent, bills, shopping sprees. Your parents love it too. She even took them all on a 2-week vacation to Europe. This part caught my attention. "Wait," I said. "Are you telling me that she takes them on these trips?" "Yep," Amanda confirmed. "Ethan's playing house with this woman, and your parents are soaking it all up. They act like they're one big happy family now. Your mom's been posting pictures from Paris and talking about how proud she is of Ethan for turning his life around." I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. Of course, Ethan had found another way to avoid responsibility. Of course, my parents were all too eager to ride his new girlfriend's coattail. It was so predictable, it was almost funny. But here's the thing. I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I didn't even feel the urge to call him out. Instead, I just felt detached, like it wasn't even my problem anymore. Because honestly, it wasn't. While they were playing the perfect family, I was building something real for myself. Cutting them off had been the best decision of my life. I had gotten a promotion at work, started saving for a down payment on a house, and even started dating someone who was genuinely kind and supportive. My life was quieter, simpler, and free of the constant chaos they used to bring. I wasn't jealous of Ethan's new life because I knew how this story would end. He'd probably cling to this woman as long as he could, but eventually the cracks would show. Maybe she'd tire of funding his lifestyle, or perhaps he'd sabotage her like he had with everyone else. Either way, it wasn't my concern anymore. Let them have their vacations and their false happiness. I had finally found something they would never find: peace. I wasn't going to give it up for anyone.